Emergency warnings are in place for a number of areas in New South Wales. Joining me live is Kearns, Assistant Commissioner for Regional Operations for the New South Wales SES. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you and your team are very busy. Sean, talk us through some of the emergency warnings at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Janie. Yeah, New South Wales SES have been extremely busy overnight, responding to what we have seen a significant amount of rain falling across a large part of New South Wales, but particularly over the Central Coast, Metropolitan Sydney and the Illawarra region. New South Wales SES currently have 78 emergency warnings out in place across New South Wales. A number of those are mainly advice and watch and act, but we do have 2 emergency warnings that have been issued. One of those is for a very small part of a caravan park around North Wagga. We have also issued an emergency warning with an evacuate this morning for a caravan park in Dubbo. And we have also just issued an emergency warning for Gronos Point, and there's about 27 properties impacted there. And we're asking residents there to be out by 7 o'clock this morning. Sorry, it's been a long night. 7 o'clock this morning, and our volunteers are out there door knocking those residents now, because what we are expecting to see is that as the Hawkesbury River rises, that they will become isolated and won't be able to get out.
And as we full know, the amount of rain that has certainly been covering so much of New South Wales, the saturated grounds already, and then we've got to contend with this flooding as well. As you said, you and your team have been very, very busy. What preparations have you been making? And I mean, this is very, very serious, obviously, with evacuations. How is the team going in those areas?
Yeah, look, the team, like our volunteers are out there and they're just working around the clock. We've got over 600 volunteers that have been out there in the field in the last 24 hours supporting communities across New South Wales. We're also being supported by a number of partner agencies helping us out there, whether that be door knocking, warning residents, helping us do flood rescues and the like. In the last 24 hours alone, we've done over 650 requests for assistance with 27 flood rescues. Most of those flood rescues were either on the Central Coast or Metropolitan Sydney, and they were mainly due to what we saw was those heavy, intense rainfalls, which did lead to some flash flooding. So we do ask people to pay attention to the conditions, and if it's really heavy rain, to drive to the conditions and avoid unnecessary travel. We're asking people to avoid driving in floodwater, and if they do come across floodwater, to turn around and find another way.
Yeah, very good advice. And the end of school holidays as well for many parts of the country. So no doubt even more people on the road trying to get home as safely as they can. We've also got a number of severe weather warnings for damaging winds. That's mainly for the coastal areas from the mid-north coast, just north of Foster down to north of Ulladulla and the south coast. So really dangerous winds. We've heard trees falling down with this recent event. What are we looking at? Because, I mean, again, the ground's so saturated and that does encourage, unfortunately, the chance of more trees down.
Yeah, that's correct. These strong winds and just with such saturated ground can lead to trees being blown over. So we're asking people to, if they're out there in those windy areas, to avoid parking under trees. If they do come across any trees down and that have taken out power lines, just to be really careful and to call 132 500 for assistance from New South Wales SES. And if it's a life-threatening emergency, to call 000. As you mentioned, it is the end of school holidays this weekend, and there will be a lot of people returning from around New South Wales and even interstate. We're asking people to keep up to date with the latest traffic conditions on live traffic and also through the New South Wales SES website for the latest emergency warnings that are listed there.
You have some sayings that we just need to keep hearing over and over. If it's flooded, forget it, for example. You mentioned the number. You've got a fantastic website with a lot of information. We mentioned at the beginning of this interview, Sean, the number of evacuations. What do people need to do to, obviously need to go to those areas, but what advice would you give people who are sitting at home very nervous and might have friends, relatives and so forth in those areas? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, look, it's important to keep up to date with those warnings that are on the New South Wales SES website. That lists all the warnings around the state. We've recently gone to the Australian warning systems, so people will be able to go to our website, click on an area where they live or where their family and friends may live, and they'll be able to see what the latest advice is. We ask people to start making plans now early. Don't always wait for SES to issue an evacuation or an emergency warning stating to evacuate. We want people to look at those decisions and make safe and appropriate decisions based on the flood risk that they know. So have an understanding of what they want to do, what they're going to do if the situation escalates and gets worse, and have in a bag with important documents and belongings ready to go. If they're in low-lying areas, to move their belongings up to higher areas of their property. If they're out in regional areas and they've got livestock and machinery, to move it to higher ground now. So it's really important that people act early and make decisions based on the information and the warnings that we give.
Because you, of all people, will know very well about floods. Give us an example of something that, you might be living somewhere and it looks okay, but how quickly do those floods come through in certain areas?
Yeah, look, they can move really quickly, and if there is intense localised rainfall, it can lead to very quick flash flooding as well, and that water can rise really quickly. What we're seeing in some of these regional locations is we're seeing the rivers being really responsive to the rainfall that's occurred, and we're going to see flooding occurring for days, if not weeks, in some of the western parts of the state. For example, last night in Dubbo, we did see the river rise a lot quicker than had been expected, which did lead us to have to issue that emergency warning for one of those caravan parks along the river in Dubbo, which did mean that people did have to leave in the early hours of the morning. But thankfully, that SES volunteers were able to go out there, support those people in the caravan park to relocate to somewhere else in Dubbo, and so again, it was really great that the community could do that. So that's what we're being faced with.
Well, thank you very much. And as you said, it's always important to keep up to date on the website. The warnings can change very quickly, but really appreciate your time. Take care, you and your team. Sean Kearns, Assistant Commissioner for Regional Operations at the New South Wales SES.